Oh, fuck. Okay. The holidays have always been a time linked with video games for me. I saw a video the other day of someone playing an Xbox just standing next to a Christmas tree.
Dribbling to the fucking 3-point line, slashing ass, rim running ass, but I'm paying, nigga. Fuck is you talking about at the 3 line? Wide open, at the fucking paint.
And it immediately shot the memories back in my head of like setting up consoles on Christmas morning, the excitement of making new accounts, putting Xbox Live codes in, and starting your very first experiences with a piece of technology that's gonna shape your youth. No, it's not that fucking does our TV even have an AV port? Beautiful. I remember a particular series of years, at most 2 or 3, where the only thing I really wanted for Christmas was an Xbox 360. At the time, I only had Nintendo consoles, that at the time being a Wii and DS. My parents were the type who were very concerned about me being exposed to violent or inappropriate media at a young age, so I found ways around it, playing World at War at a friend's house or Saints Row 3 with my cousin. But within the walls of my own home, until I was about 13 or 14, it was nothing but rated T for teen. For this reason, the majority of Xbox's library was just completely out of the question, and therefore the console itself remained pretty elusive to me. However, it wasn't the Call of Duties, Halos, or Gears of War that made me want the console. Nay, I had another dream. The lasting image that I still have in my mind is me sitting in class in like 3rd or 4th grade, just daydreaming about riding a speeder bike through the forests of Endor. I wanted one game, man. Battlefront 2004. For a kid whose exposure to Star Wars began with these more simple LEGO games, seeing the battles that I saw in the movies play out in a more realistic, like action-packed, complete form with vehicles and weapons and heroes made me go feral. These games were, in my 10-year-old mind, the absolute pinnacle of gaming. However, in my Xboxlessness, I was unable to play them. That was until I found the topic of today's video, Battlefront Elite Squadron. To provide some background, this is a game I had to do research on even back in the day before I bought it. Going in, I was well aware that I wasn't going to get a typical console experience for Battlefront. Even as a 10-year-old, I could see that my little Texas Instrument fucking double screen was not going to host something on the scale of these big open third-person games. But what I did get, I can't say I expected. This game is not bad. Like, in my memory, I really like it. I was completely unaware until further researching this game that this was actually a game on the PSP. Arguably the better version was on the PSP given the graphical abilities of that console. However, I'm not going to talk about that version. I didn't play it, I can't speak on it, I didn't own a PSP. When I was given the choice of getting a PSP or getting a second DS, but now with a camera, I chose the one that could run Flipnote Studio. Cool side note, these games are technically stripped down versions of what Battlefront 3 was supposed to be. While the mainline games were canned, they chose to keep the handheld versions that they were making alongside them, and people suspect this because the PSP version of the game shares a lot of maps and scenes with the leaked pre-alpha footage of Battlefront 3, which is cool because it means that these strange handheld ports are the closest thing that we have to this lost game that we all fucking wish it would have come out. Okay, coming back to this one. Even though the DS is not generally suited for these types of games, they figured out how to make it work. Instead of a third-person perspective like every other Battlefront game, this version opts for more of like a almost isometric top-down perspective, which not only saves on resources, but makes it far more comfortable to navigate than some pseudo two-stick system used in most DS shooters. I'm actually really happy they opted for this control layout because the game was developed by N-Space, who's the same people who made all of the COD DS ports, so there is definitely a world where they tried to make a third-person version of this game that just would not have been as good. I've yapped enough. Let's fucking go. From the jump, this game's presentation is just impressive. It begins with the title crawl just like the movies do before panning down to a really beautiful cinematic. And before you question, wait, this is beautiful? Consider the fact that this is running on a DS and now it's kind of more beautiful. Anyway, from the title crawl, we learn that the Clone Wars are currently raging on. There's a pair of elite twin clone troopers, X1 and X2, who will serve as our main characters, and our first mission is to establish an outpost on Tatooine with our Jedi Master Feroda. The game then transitions from these nice 3D cutscenes to an RPG style, featuring some genuinely beautiful art on the top screen. Huge shout out to Ken Sperduso and Andrew Olson for their work on these images. Beautiful shit. I love the art in this game. From the first conversation, we learn that X1 is kind of a hard ass that sees himself as a general, while X2, your player character, appears more empathetic and human. Before we can learn any more about these twins, the two are attacked by droids and told by their master to get to the Republic garrison. You then start the actual gameplay. The game introduces you to some basic mechanics like shooting, using grenades, and swapping weapons while you gun down droids in the desert. Once you reach the garrison, Master Frodo is nowhere to be found, so you go off on a speeder section in search of him, which starts the second of 3 gameplay types that the game utilizes, a speeder section. I think these are my favorite parts of the game, and it's not just because they let me live my speeder bike fantasy without a real game console. If you're new to my channel, hey, welcome. Thanks for clicking on this, but if you're not, you probably already know how much I love fast movement in games, and damn if this game doesn't feed me well. On the bottom screen, you get this little throttle thing that you increase by pressing up on the D-pad. If you push it up too far, the engine overheats and you're slowed for a little while, so the best strat is to kind of just keep revving it in the middle on the higher end of the gauge without pushing it too hard. The environments that you go through in these sections are so pretty to me, and I love the backgrounds and textures. Thinking about it, this game came out in 2009, which is about the middle of the DS's life and 5 years after it launched, so probably by this point developers, specifically N-Space, had enough familiarity with the hardware to create games of this scale and caliber. After this section, you meet up with Master Frodo and fight your way through a hangar to escape the planet. This section is just more of the same, kind of gunning down droids. I'm skipping over these just because they're similar and basic, but they're not bad. They're really fun, really satisfying, rewarding. It's just nothing's really happening and I want to get through the game. Once you reach the hangar at the end of this level, you enter our third gameplay type, space missions, and I just want to point out, this is 12 minutes. It took you 12 minutes to show off this much of what the game has to offer. This game also uses really effectively hidden loading screens, so the whole thing feels seamless. Like this section where you're flying up through the clouds is, I'm guessing, a loading screen, but they make it a cutscene so you don't feel that and it just feels like you took off and now you're in space. The rest of the game is not as sporadic as this level where it's swapping between gameplay modes all the time. I think almost every level uses all 3 of them, but they just clearly wanted to make a good first impression on the start of the game and just put all of it really quickly in. The space combat in this game is actually also really fun. The only complaint that I have is that the visibility is kind of fucked up, which is just the result of the handheld having such a small screen. Like when enemies get way too far away from you, it's really difficult to see and hit them, but otherwise these sections behave about how you would expect them to. Your Z-axis is locked, so you're only moving on a 2D plane, similar to the sections in LEGO Star Wars 2, but this makes a lot of sense and makes the movement far more manageable than if you had full 3D control. You shoot droid ships until you're given the chance to land on the droid command ship, infiltrate, and sabotage it. I adore that they put this in the first mission because it's one of the coolest things to me about Battlefront 2, like the way you were able to do this exact same thing in those space missions. So giving the best possible version of that you could experience on the DS is just a really cool use of the hardware. After blowing up the command ship, you fly off and that ends the first mission, starting with a bang. This was, I feel like that was fast, but also the mission was 14 minutes? I think the whole recording was like 14 minutes. These are not long levels and there's not a lot of them. This game is short, but it's short and sweet. They make it worth your time. For your bravery in destroying the command ship, Palpatine himself invites you and your brother to Coruscant to be rewarded. As you seem completely unable to catch a break, droids yet again attack your position, and you enter another combat section with a mini-boss against a Magna Guard. The gameplay here is pretty basic, with you remaining locked onto your target and just rotating around them, but it gives a more immersive feel to the fights than the further away top-down camera does. Once the fight is over, you're introduced to the first alternate class, the Heavy. By default, you're playing as the Assault class with a basic blaster and shotgun, but once you unlock the Heavy, you're able to use explosives and a minigun that just tears through enemies. This thing is a blast to use because it lets you mow down crowds of droids unlike any other gun, and it makes just a nice sound. After fighting through waves of droids in the streets of Coruscant, you finally catch up to Grievous himself and start the main boss fight of this level. This fight is really funny to me because the weapons that you have are too weak to do actual damage to him, so what you're supposed to do instead is just use the knockback from your explosives to push him into oncoming traffic. And aside from how goofy the sound is when he gets hit, This fight's actually really fun and runs surprisingly well for the amount of movement happening on screen. Grievous eventually decides to stop wasting his time with 2 random clones and runs off, which leads to our next space section. This part's really sick because it actually lines up with the movie, letting you play as a clone in the opening of the episode 3, like the Battle of Coruscant. The game even ties us in, like as far as having you to escort Anakin and Obi-Wan to Grievous's ship, which I just thought was a fun addition. It felt like a Universal Studios ride where you get to like be in the movie with Vin Diesel.
Lucky for you, our whole family will protect you.
After you escort them, you land on another separatist ship and start doing what you do best, which is mowing down droids. Wait, that's really funny. They're like, we're gonna go take out this other ship. You take out the exact same ship but slightly smaller that just happened to be in front of it. Once you clear out all the droids, you make your way to the bridge and take control of this turret on the ship and provide cover fire for Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's really cool because at the end of this section, you get to actually clear out the hangar that they end up landing in the movie. It's just a really cool continuation of this tie-in to the episode. Okay, I'm on my laptop now on a different setup, so it's the same mic, it should still sound fine, but if the audio changes, that's why. We open up with a cutscene telling us there's a separatist uprising on Cata and Moedia. I butchered that. After receiving orders from Feroda, X1 begins to arguing with his brother over the validity of a Jedi's rule. The story here is really, really basic, like it's effectively just one brother good and one brother bad, but I still found these characters to be somewhat compelling despite their simplicity. The level opens with a short vehicle section before giving you your first choice in the game, and I'm going to be completely honest, I have no fucking clue what these choices do. I ended up dying after making one of these choices and went with the other option the second time, only to get the exact same gameplay after. As a kid, I optimistically assumed that these led you to different levels or impacted the story in some way, but as far as I can tell, they don't actually do anything at all. Okay, scratch that, I lied, they actually do something, but it's very minor. In this case, the choice you're making is whether you want to fight AATs on the ground or a larger group of droids. I opted to take the larger droids, but then I was faced with the AATs on the ground. This is a good choice though, because you're actually able to hijack these tanks, I don't want to keep saying the abbreviation, it doesn't sound good, and use them to blow up these cars of droids. This is made possible by the third class in the game, the Engineer, who can freeze enemies in place, use a grenade launcher, and repair damaged vehicles. I remember this being one of my favorite parts of the game as a kid, and coming back to it, I'm still kind of impressed by these tanks being in the game. The Engineer themselves is, my opinion, the best class in the game, just because their stun gun is so effective at controlling the flow of combat. After a short on-foot section against some droids, we see some fellow clones planting bombs who tell us that Order 66 has been issued and that the Jedi must be killed before they can assassinate the Chancellor. It's kind of cool seeing this scene from the perspective of a clone, and I will note that this game came out 5 years before inhibitor chips were even ever explicitly named or talked about, so obviously they aren't in this game, but going back and playing it, I noticed that and thought I'd mention it here for anyone who else was thrown off by that. Moving on, this game has some of the best cutscene art in the entire thing, as Master Feroda kills off your squad in self-defense before launching into our next boss fight. Feroda is our first actual Force user boss, and he shares a lot of abilities with some of the later game bosses. This one's pretty easy, however. I need that pop filter, don't I? This one's pretty easy, however, as Feroda periodically gets— I'm trying not to hit those P's. This one is pretty easy, however, because Feroda periodically gets swarmed by clones, who you can rely on for the majority of the boss's health if you just step back and let them cook. Dantooine! The next mission begins with us getting a talking to from Vader about how hot and cool he is. X2 is feeling some regret over what happened with the Jedi, while X1 gives his brother shit for having human emotions. X2 quickly realizes that their current mission involves slaughtering a village of innocent people, so he decides to desert the Imperial Army, launching us into an extremely short space section where you escape X1's Imperial forces and land on Dantooine. On the surface, you unlock the final class in the game, the Spy. The Spy is one of my favorite, most specific and situational skills in the game, which is the ability to hack hostile turrets. More often than not, you can destroy these pretty quickly, so there's no real reason to keep them alive, but I always thought it was cool that you could create traps using these turrets. The Spy's other abilities are dual-wielding pistols, which are just a cooler-looking version of the base rifle, and an interesting energy rifle that shoots these red beams of explosive energy that actually do a good amount of damage to most enemies. This just flattens them. Shut the fuck up. As a kid, this was by far my most played class, simply for the rule of cool, but coming back to it, I found that the primary firing method of the class is somewhat lacking compared to the more specialized Engineer or Heavy. Moving on, you meet up— I don't want to— okay, break there. Moving on, you meet up with a mysterious hooded Jedi who assists you in fighting off some Imperial clone troopers in this courtyard area that I always found to be really beautiful as a kid. Like, this exact shade of pink cherry blossoms is my favorite color, so I'm probably biased, but I could just see having a nice picnic in this courtyard. After the fight, the Jedi reveals that his name is Fallon Gray. He's the Jedi whose DNA was used to clone X1 and X2. He explains kind of haphazardly that he happened to make an emergency landing on Kamino during the time that the clones are being developed, and while being treated by the Kaminoans, they just took a sample of Fallon's DNA, leading to the creation of the twins. I always liked this and never questioned it as a kid, but think about how insanely powerful and sought after clones of Force users would be. Like, if Force sensitivity was something that could just be copied, why didn't Palpatine make an army of Sith? And that why they get— I know there are clones in like non-canon books and shit, but something about its implementation in this game has just that energy of that one kid on the playground who would be like, actually I have a force field and magic and I'm invincible. Like, X2 feels like a child's first idea of a Star Wars OC. Like, he's a clone, yeah, and a Jedi, yeah, and he's friends with Luke Skywalker, sick, dude. That isn't to say they aren't good characters, but I know I'm not alone in feeling like the story is kind of silly. Anyway, you and your new clone daddy continue through the village and fight off the Imperials led by your evil brother. Can I just take a second to appreciate the environments here? Thank you. Let's hear it for the dress. Let's hear it for the back of the dress. Once you fight the clones, you come face to face with X1, promptly shoots you to the ground before beefing with Fallon. The Jedi makes quick work of X1, but makes the mistake of sparing his life. Can you forgive me, Father? You lie. I don't trust this dumb bitch. Do you see how he's holding that staff? Do you see how he's holding that staff like he's like, I'm gonna stab you in the stomach? Cease this battle and we... Ah! Brother. Behold, brother, I have surpassed all obstacles of that. I just... But I realize all I'm doing is the oats, brother. No, brother. X1 predictably betrays the Jedi, and in his last moments, Fallon transfers his life force into you, saving your life and ending our first of the 3 acts. After living in exile for 15 years, you're met by Coda, the Jedi who trained Fallon Gray. Coda recruits us into the Rebel Alliance to help stop one of the final pieces of the currently under construction Death Star from reaching its target. From this point forward, I really don't feel like mentioning any of the combat sections, like they're not that important. Like, how many times can I say, you hold down the shoot button and walk through hallways? It's fun to play through, but not worth commenting on for content. You shoot Imperials in the ship, then you take one of their ships and shoot them in space before, you guessed it, you shoot them on the ground again. The climax of this mission is you using a laser to destroy the Desolation Station so the Imperials could never make another Death Star again. In the next mission, Coda tells us about a rebel squad that was captured by Imperials on Geonosis. Their goal is to infiltrate the base and free them. Just the 2 of us. The original team was discovered on account of their large numbers. This mission opens up with a pretty unique boss fight against Boba. Oh, this part! Okay, I'm reading a script and I kind of forgot what the game was. This part's actually really fun. The boss fight with Boba Fett in space. This section kind of controls the same way as the speeder sections, where you're just going back and forth on a flat plane, only controlling the left or right. But because of that, it's like way more epic and fast than if it were just an open flying around section. This part's really cool. I don't have anything constructive to say about this part, but I need to I'm making ethos appeal that this is sick. After doing enough damage, Boba flies off and leaves you to land on the surface of Geonosis. This level reignited my excitement for the game that was actually starting to get a bit repetitive. Like, even reading back through this script, it was starting to get a little tiring. There was a dull section of the game. It's over now. Oh, and then you go from, oh my god, I love this. You go from boss fight with Boba Fett immediately into speeder bike section. What a cool level. This level is visually appealing, fast-paced. It does everything that I love about this game just really well. After that section, you get to fight through my favorite level in the complete saga. Watch my other video. Free plug! You free the rebels, clear an escape path, and just tear shit up. This was the first section that I actually got the turret hacking to start working, so I was very excited about that. Yes, there you go. Yes, because, yep, there it is. I'm not crazy. I still don't know what that red symbol on the side does. Okay, and yeah, that was a point that I wanted to bring up. What the fuck is this thing? Like, it's on the bottom of the screen the entire game. I thought maybe it was telling you if you're locked onto an enemy or not, but it's there whether or not there's any enemies near you. It's on all the classes, it's on during space missions, it's on during the campaign, and it's on during multiplayer. I have no idea what it is. It never changes shape, it never changes color, it never moves, so why the fuck is it here? Fuck, who knows? Anyway, that's the end of that mission, and up next we got Yavin 4. The next mission is the Battle of Yavin, which is the event that all of the years in Star Wars are named after. Fun fact, I'm assuming you know that after watching this video. It starts with you on the planet's surface with a new ally, and I don't know why I realized this right here, but this game doesn't use the touchscreen at all. Like, even the menus can be navigated entirely using the buttons. There's one use that the touchscreen has, which is zooming the camera in and out, but so slightly, and I found that to be almost unnoticeable. I don't know if I played the game zoomed in or out, I couldn't tell you. I just thought it was interesting because this not using of this touchscreen stands out a lot from some of the other games I've talked about on this channel that very intentionally use the DS as a unique piece of hardware. I thought it was interesting because in many ways this game feels like it was meant to be more than a DS game. Obviously it was, but it's very obvious in the way that they utilize the hardware. Anyway, after a short on-foot section, you get to play the part of this level that we've all been waiting for, the trench run. There's no studs in this one, but it controls much like the Boba Fett boss fight earlier, and much like that fight, it's really fun. Similar to the Episode 3 tie-in, this mission has you playing directly through the events of the films, assisting the main characters. You're just one of Luke's X-Wing pilots, which is kind of a fun approach to putting the player in a world of Star Wars. The part of the mission I love the most is the section immediately after you destroy the Death Star, where you get to fly amongst the rubble and bodies of the destroyed station. I love this because I always wondered what happened to the people aboard the Death Star when it was destroyed, and this game answers that. But you're still... Oh my god. Oh my god. That's crazy. I feel like I'm in a boundary break. I feel like I'm not supposed to be seeing this. I just thought it was really cool that they let you see this part of the story that usually just ends with the rebels flying off happily into the sunset. Like, I've always wondered what happened to the mangled bodies, and fucking here it is. Can I say mangled bodies if I want to apply for monetization? I don't think Hoth! Following the destruction of the Death Star, you join the rebels on Hoth and help them defend against some waves of stormtroopers. After clearing the hangar, you get a snowspeeder section where you dodge TIE bombing runs and fly amongst some strangely scaled enemies. There's some tiny ATSCs. There's some really small ATSCs. Those are some really small Whoa! Wait, once this section's over, you arrive to these turrets and have to fight off waves of Imperials. I remember failing this section multiple times as a kid and it driving me fucking crazy, but I guess that's just because I had kid brain and I had no problem with it now. You then shoot at a Star Destroyer to allow the rebels to escape the planet. The next section launches you into space and makes you board the Star Destroyer to blow it up from the inside. But aboard the hull of your ship is your brother, who is now turned into a Sith and attacks you to begin our next boss fight. This fight was really fun because I was able to use the engineer to freeze him in place and just get my turrets to chunk off most of his health. Wait, I can just put down all the auto turrets and then freeze him and then hit him with grenades. Oh, I picked the perfect class for this boss fight. It felt kinda cheap, but it worked, fuck it. Once he's injured enough, X1 pushes you away and makes a run for it as his Star Destroyer begins the countdown to destruction. You make it to your ship and escape as the ship explodes behind you. Endor! If you couldn't tell, I'm kind of trying to get through this part fast. It's not because it's boring, but it's because these are missions that are really short, that are back to back to back, so I'm just trying to match the pacing of the game. The game then jumps from the start of Episode 5 to the end of Episode 6, and tasks you with defending a group of Ewoks. Using the Engineer class, you can actually destroy and then revive an AT-ST, which makes this section so much fun. After fighting off some stormtroopers, you get to do the main thing that I wanted to do when I bought this game, which is riding a speeder bike on Endor. It's effectively the same as the other speeder bike sections, but it fulfills the dream I had as a child, and for that, I deeply appreciate it. You then fight your way on foot through some questionably textured trees before fighting your way to an X-Wing and taking off. Above the planet, you assist in the effort to destroy the second Death Star. Fuck it, it's kind of funny how X2 just happens to be at every major event from all of the films. Like, bro got motion, bro is active. You get another choice here, which this time I actually cannot fucking tell you what the difference is. It seems like you're just deciding where to send reinforcements, but I can't see any real impact on the game because of this decision, so I don't know. And then for some reason, this piece of calamari decides that you need to board an actively being bombed Death Star to retrieve some quote-unquote encrypted tactical files, so you land your X-Wing and enter the ship with 4 minutes.
Do you know you have 30 minutes? 30
to get in and out. Alongside R2, you steal the data and make your way off the space station seconds before its destruction. After the battle, Luke rewards you with your very own lightsaber to formally make you a Jedi Knight and end our second half of the game. Dathomir. I started doing those like planet announcements halfway through the video because of how the script was written. I'm sorry if they're scaring you, because I assume that most people aren't just sitting down watching my videos like a movie, and you're probably doing something else, so me abruptly going, Dathomir, probably isn't great. Like, sorry. Anyway, this is where the game completely diverges from the films, in actually a really interesting way. The final act of the game takes place immediately after the fall of the Empire, and sees you as a new Jedi cleaning up Imperial remnants. I think this is my favorite part of the game, just because it allows the story to do its own thing, instead of being completely locked to the events of the film. It starts off with Dathomir with you fighting the Night Sisters, and there's no real reason for them to be included in this game. Like, the Night Sisters have nothing to do with the overarching story, but I think they're sick, so I'm happy they're in the game. This is the first section of the game where you actually are able to use a lightsaber and the Force. The lightsaber has two basic attacks, one standard strike that you can chain into a combo, and then a saber throw for enemies that are at range. The lightsaber has a good amount of coverage with how widely you swing it, so chaining multiple enemies into that combo is very possible and very satisfying. You also get the ability to force push away enemies from you and knock them down, and I found this somewhat gimmicky and useless outside of the boss fights where it is really powerful. After arriving at the Imperial prison, you get a surprise visit from a Rancor boss fight. The knockback force ability that I just... The force push ability I just don't say ability, actually, just say the force push. The force push move that I just mentioned is actually really useful in this fight, because you get to use it to knock these rocks into the Rancor to do big chunks of damage. Once the Rancor is dead, the Night Sister matriarch atop its back jumps down and starts phase 2 of this encounter. I don't think there's any other multi-phase boss fights in this game, but the fact that this one was really cool to me. The same rock mechanic works here and allows you to knock the Night Sister on her back so you can get some cheap hits in. Something I actually love about these sections is that they don't limit you to only using the lightsaber. You still have the ability to swap to your guns and the classes from earlier in the game, so it's just an additive thing where instead of taking your powers away, they're just making you more powerful over the course of the game. I think it's really cool because there's not a lot of characters in Star Wars canon that actively use guns and lightsabers alongside one another, so it's a cool combination. After a sick fucking spin move, you make it to your brother's secret lab, where you find he's been attempting to make his own clones. The game then really abruptly cuts back to the outside, where you find that someone has planted bombs on your X-Wings, killing some of your men. When you find the Imperial, you have a moment of rage. Resist me fucking cutting your throat open. Before realizing you're stronger than your brother and won't succumb to the dark side. You fly off the planet for a forgettable and unnecessary space section before flying off to find X1's base. Mustafar, this is the final level in the game, and it's pretty great. I don't like how I said that. I really don't like how I said that. I'm leaving it in, only because I'm commenting on it now, but what the fuck was that? Okay, anyway, this level does a really good job showing off the variety of gameplay types with an on-foot section, a turret section, a speeder section, and a boss section all on the same level. It starts with you fighting above the surface of Mustafar as X1 has placed a shield around the planet. After fighting your way through the ship, you get another choice, and I've said it before, and I actually won't say it again because it's the last one, but I am at a loss for what the real impact of these decisions are. Most of them are worded in such a way that I don't actually know what I'm picking. Okay, take this example. This is the last one. Right here, in this section, it says there's activity in the fortress and you can send a team to investigate, or you can send a team to destroy the shield generators you know are already there. Are those not two different teams? Why are those things mutually exclusive? What benefit do I get from destroying the shields? Who's inside the base? None of this is explained to you, so how the fuck am I supposed to know where I'm putting? I'm pretty sure I have to believe that these choices do something, otherwise they would have just cut them out of the game. But I would have greatly appreciated if they just took the time to say, hey, if you make this choice, this happens, and if you make this other choice, this happens. I feel like I'm not asking for much. Anyway, once you destroy the shield... What? Sometimes I look at my own script and I'm like, why did you write that like that? Anyway, your shield attack fails and the shield remains up, so you decide to break a hole through the shield yourself using a Superstar Destroyer. A Superstar Destroyer. On the surface, we get my absolute favorite speeder bike section in the game, where you get to fly across pits of lava on your way to X1's fortress. It's the same gameplay as all of the other ones, but the visuals just really sell the idea that this is a final level and it's an epic thing. Once inside the fortress, you find out Luke has been captured by X1 somehow. He wasn't in the mission before, his name hasn't been mentioned in like 10 years, fuck it. So you fight your way through some vintage battle droids to find Luke in a bubble. You kill the guards surrounding him and help him escape. The two of you fight deeper into the fortress until you make your way to the final boss area where Luke decides to leave you on your own to face your brother. The cutscene that comes right before the final boss is one of my favorite cutscenes in the game because it's one of the few moments in the game where they let you get these in-engine close-ups to the models. I just like seeing the polygons and I think it's cool. The fight itself is relatively simple. It's the same idea as all the other ones where you drop explosives to knock the enemy down before backing up and zoning them with your ranged weapons. X1 periodically does this lightning tower attack where you have to back up, but beyond that, there's really no surprises in terms of gameplay. I actually had a really good time with this one because it challenged me a lot more than the other bosses did, but in a rewarding way where I felt like I was playing an actual action game, and by the end of the fight, my health was getting low and I was like, fuck, I gotta actually dodge and hit him at the right time. It's what I would expect from an action game, not what I would expect from a DS trying to emulate the idea of an action game, so they just did a really good job there. After the fight, you get my absolute favorite cutscene in the game, which is just the goofiest shit. You never did know how to finish it. It's just the fucking backflip that X2 does gets my ass every time. Like, I ended up needing to re-record this last boss fight because I fucked up recording it. So my reaction in that clip was actually the second reaction after seeing it 10 minutes prior, but it's still fucking funny. It just doesn't help that the models are, like I mentioned, these polygonal janky N64 looking polygon blobs. Once your brother's dead, Luke formally invites you in the final cutscene to declare you as a Jedi Master for your bravery. The game ends with a still shot recreating the iconic shot from the film before fading to black. Okay, I would say as far as a Star Wars story goes, this game is pretty good. I'd place it well above anything that was done in the Disney sequels, and so that's not worth much, but something. I would suspect that in the PSP version, in the planned console versions, these characters' stories would have been a lot more fleshed out, because it's really obvious to me the game skips big sections of time and cuts corners to fit the full story in such a small game. But even with those caveats, I still felt like they succeeded in telling a unique and memorable story within the Star Wars universe that, like, communicated with the source material while still being unique and original enough to stand on its own. Alright, because this is a Battlefront game, you already know that they had to include a multiplayer mode. You have the option to host or join players locally, but obviously for the sake of playing on an emulator in 2024, I was just fighting bots. There's 3 modes: Teams, Free-For-All, and Hero Battle. Teams and Free-For-All are basically the same game mode, with one having Teams and one having, you guessed it, Free-For-All. Regardless of which one of the standard modes you pick, you're then taken to a screen where you get to choose the game mode order between capital ship, planetside, and space. The winner of the first round gets an overall damage boost, the winner of the second gets a defense boost, and the winner of the third wins the game overall. I think this system is actually really cool and interesting because I could imagine there being some amount of strategy to, like, if you know your friend is better at planetside but not space, you might save space for the last round so you know that you'll win the game overall. In practice, it doesn't change that much, but I just think it's a neat idea and concept. As for the actual game modes themselves, Capital Ship is an on-foot mode where you're supposed to take droids from the middle of the map and hold them in your marked corner for as long as you can without the other team stealing them. This mode works really well in teams, but is an absolute pain in the ass when you play it in free-for-all. With a teammate, if you die on offense trying to get the enemy droid, you still have someone alive to block the enemy team from coming back to your base and just instantly stealing your droid. In free-for-all, this is not the case. This means that the entire match is just walking back and forth, trading the droid back and forth until someone randomly hits a higher score and wins. Again though, Teams immediately fixes this problem, which tells me that it's not inherent to the game mode, but just the fact that free-for-all does not work with 4 players, really. What was the idea there, man? I had fun playing teams with bots, but I'd imagine it would have been even more fun and gone just crazy with friends on like a school field trip. Kinda sad I hadn't have other people to play this game with as a kid, but I'll go cry in my corner. Planetside mode is what you would expect from a traditional Battlefront game mode where you just capture command points and win by holding them longer. The game suffers from the same problem of trading back and forth that the capital ship issue has in free-for-all, but again, in team modes, this is just a ton of fun. The final game mode space is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's just a dogfight in space where the team with the most kill wins. In terms of factions and maps, you actually get all of the same 4 factions as you would in the other Battlefront games: the Republic, Confederacy, Rebels, and Empire. And the maps, while limited in number, often a decent degree of variety in their terrain and environment, with the maps being Kashyyyk, Tatooine, Dantooine, and Hoth. All in all, I think it's a pretty solid representation of the core Battlefront experience, given the limitations of the hardware. But the best game mode from Battlefront 2 is also in this game, and that is Hero Mode. They did not skimp out here at all. Hero Mode gives you just 2 maps, which is fine, because one's from the original trilogy and one is from the prequels. The more impressive thing is the roster of 12 characters that they give you to choose from, who actually mostly don't appear in the base game. Like, some of these characters obviously had existing models, like the Twins or Grievous, but characters like Darth Vader only appear in cutscenes, and characters like Mace Windu and Darth Maul aren't in the game at all. So it's really sick that they put them in here. Like, they did not need to go out of their way to model these characters and give them unique movesets, but they did. A lot of the Force users play pretty similarly, but they don't all share animations. Like, I was expecting Darth Maul to have the same animation as the other Sith, but as far as I can tell, each hero has their own unique set of moves, with some minor overlap between the movesets, but still each Jedi or Sith has their own unique set of shared moves. The mode itself is the same as the console version, where it's just a free-for-all deathmatch to see who can get the most kills, but I would say this is the mode I put by far my most playtime in this game as a kid. I just loved being able to fight as Force users and replay my favorite mode from the console on a handheld port. The only, minor, this isn't the script, I'm just saying this now, I wish they had Boba Fett and Jango Fett. I think I'm asking for a fucking lot doing that. Like, they've already gone above and beyond, and I'm like, why didn't you give me the extra little thing? But it is cool that they're in the console one and not this one. I was just saying. And there you have it. I have covered everything this game has to offer. I really hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a happy holidays and a great new year. I'm well aware that I didn't need to make this a holiday thing, because most of the video has fuck all to do with, any holidays. But I just thought it would be a cool way to approach talking about this game, and it made sense for the season. Thank you all so much for the support this year. Things have been, strange and challenging, I'll say, in my personal life, but I can confidently say that this channel is something I'm really proud of, and that is mostly because of you guys. Okay, I'm coming back while editing this to add something. When I said that you guys make me proud of this channel, obviously the views and the subscribers and all that is fucking awesome, and I'm really happy with those numbers, but the biggest thing that I'm really content with and excited me more than I was expecting to when I started doing this was the community and the comments, and the fact that I'm able to make you guys think about something fondly from your childhood that you probably haven't thought about in a bit, and giving a space or creating a space where that is something that you can just kind of feel good in and talk to other people who have similar experience. I wasn't expecting that at all, but it's the best part of doing this by far, and I just love reading your guys' comments and responding to them, so keep the conversation going. I am gonna keep making more shit. This is just the beginning. I love this, and I hope you guys do too. Have a good one.